Welcome everyone to the fifth webinar as part of the Trees Around the Globe student research campaign. And I'd just like to welcome everybody here in the northeast part of the United States where I am in Maryland. It's pretty cold out. It's about, right now it's about 29 degrees Fahrenheit. It's pretty cold for this area right now. It was down to 17 degrees Fahrenheit earlier this morning. So, yeah, Dora, I saw that I see your chat in the chat, Dora. Yeah, go ahead and just.
Zašto ja ne mogu slušalice neke?
One second here. I'm going to, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to put everybody on mute now so we can get started. All right. All right, thank you. So this today is coming live from Croatia, investigations of Park Mlaka, and we're going to be featuring Dora, who may be having some microphone issues right now, but if need be, we can we'll push through it. Her teacher, Marina Pavlik, is also on right now, and it looks like we have a great group of people for the webinar. So let's go move on to the meat of things here. First of all, I want to always put this up. You know, every month I put this up where I recognize those who have taken, you know, the most measurements for each one of the main protocols for the campaign, and that goes for tree height, greenings, which is green up, green down, and also land cover. And for tree height, we have three. We have Emma Ana Prieto, Ali from Brazil, and Jeff Bauman, who's on right now, and Anna is as well. So congratulations, you guys have the most for the tree height, and continue doing that. As you know, we're in an intensive observation period right now for tree height, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a couple slides. But then we also have greenings with green up, green down. And we have a bunch of measurements coming in from the last, for December of 2018, lots from Croatia. So maybe some of you know the people who are on here from Croatia. A lot of you are on the webinar right now from Croatia. So maybe you're from that school or these measurements. And we have land cover from, looks like the United States, Japan, Croatia again, and Argentina. Anna's on there as well. So, congratulations for hitting this top leaderboard for December of 2018 for these measurements for tree height, greenings, and land cover. And every month I do this because we want to really show, just how awesome you all are for taking these measurements and being part of the campaign. And I know there's a couple people on here that are consistently on this list, like Anna and Jeff Bauman and Emma from Oman, for sure. They're definitely on here pretty much all the time. And also Peter Nelson from Oregon State University in the United States. So all of you, congratulations. And if you're not on here, all you have to do is start taking measurements and, take many of them. And I should mention that, especially with tree height, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for lots of measurements because we really want data density. Taking lots of measurements really allows for students to understand the precision accuracy needed to really estimate the tree height, to really get that measurement. And also, we have scientists here at NASA that look at that data, but what they're looking for is multiple data points for the same area, because that just allows them to really hone in on the precision of that data and how accurate it is. When you have more measurements, you can average those measurements a lot better. When you have more data, it makes a robust data set, and the more measurements you do, usually that lends itself to the better the measurements will be over time, because you'll get used to taking those measurements and how it's done. So that, that's what science is about. The more measurements that scientists take in a certain area, the more you understand about that area. And that's what we're trying to do. As you know, with Globe, you try to take measurements in your local environment in order to better understand that local environment. And when you understand your local environment, you can really understand how that environment that you're working in, works with the big picture of how our planet's changing over time. So congratulations to those of you who are on this list. And if you're not, you can strive to become part of that list. So I always like to show this here. I like to show this because it's really fun. It's kind of a tree that I built. I show this at every webinar, but this is why we're doing the trees campaign. We start off with, why trees? And then we learn that from tree research experts. We understand why trees are important by looking at satellite and instrument data and maps. And I should mention that, as this trees campaign is aligned to what's happening with the ICESat-2 satellite mission and the JEDI instrument on the International Space Station. So since NASA right now is currently in a shutdown mode in the US, partial government shutdown, the data is not available yet because ICESat-2 data hasn't been out. It might have been out by now if we didn't have the shutdown, but hopefully once the shutdown is lifted and the government is reopened again, we will be able to get that ICESat-2 data out there. And then once we do, I'll have a special webinar that can allow people to look at that data. I can show you exactly how to use that data. It'll take a little bit once it's out to figure out how we can use it. But once we figure that out, I'll come back with everybody and have a special webinar to show you, what the data looks like and how you can access it as well. And then also, one of the reasons why we're doing today this webinar is because we have student data. Globe is all about students, scientists, teachers, and citizen scientists. But there's more to just the measurements than the numbers. There's cultural aspects as well. These cultural aspects allow you to understand, more than just the science behind the data, but also what the data means to people. For instance, in a couple months, we're going to have, I believe, Oscar Garza in a couple months is going to be presenting on how trees are looked at and measured by the Salish tribe out of Montana. So it's going to be showing you the scientific and the cultural combination or collaboration that they do there in parts of Montana. And then we have collaboration, the Global Student and School Collaboration Networking, where instead of just taking data in your environment and looking at it in your environment, you look at it all over the world. And you can do that through the Globe visualization system, through the Globe Advanced Data Access tool, the ADAT tool, and you can look at this data all over the world for any time, where they've taken these measurements. And then when you put that all together, you have the foundation, which is the trees campaign. So this is a great way to really understand why we're doing what we're doing with the campaign. And I know maybe a lot of you on here have not ever taken a tree measurement, and it's pretty simple. Those of you who are on here who have taken it, it takes a little bit to get started, but once you start taking the measurements, it's really easy to do. It takes, literally a couple minutes to go out there and do it. And I should also mention that, hopefully we'll get a lot more tree height measurements when the NASA Globe Observer tree height measurement comes out within the next few months. So stay tuned for that. I'll have updates on that. We're working on that right now. After this webinar, I actually have a meeting about that. So we're super excited to get that out there. It'll be an easier way. Instead of all the tools and instrumentation, you can do it using your electronic devices. So you can use your cell phone or your iPad or things like that. So stay tuned for that. So today we're talking about Croatia, and we're looking at the trees and the parks, and so in order to put us into the feel of Croatia, I found this really cool video that just showcases an island of Pag in Croatia. Many of you on here probably know exactly where this is. I don't specifically. I looked it up, but I don't know it personally. So I wanted to show you, what's going, bring you into the flavor of, what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to go ahead and start this video. So there are three reasons why I chose that video. The first is, one, it's beautiful. Two is it's Croatia. And three, there were lots of trees in there that could be measured. So that's why I wanted to show that, because to get us into the flavor of Croatia. So we will jump into, sorry about that, we will jump into what we're going to do today with the presentation. And investigations from Park Mlaka, and Marina Pavlik is the teacher, and the student is Dora Mendez. Let's see if we can get the microphone and everything working. And yeah, so let me answer that question, Lorene. So Lorene's comment before we get started, in that picture, in the video that you just saw from Pog, it said, Lorene says, these trees show one issue I have with measuring. The trunks are very complex and the trunks are difficult to pick the measuring point. So what you should do with that, I know it's difficult, but you should look towards the center of the tree and find the spot that is closest to the ground. So, you know, look for the center of the tree. I know a lot of those roots spread out wide, but you want to start, you know, at the center of the tree, go down to where you see pretty much the center of that trunk, you know, that the area that's right at the base. I know some of them might be tricky to get into. If you have lots of roots sticking out, you're just going to have to start from those roots if you can't access the other part of the trunk. So I hope that helps a little bit. So Dora, are you ready to present? Is everything good with your microphone? Let me open up the window here. All right, we'll wait a minute or two. Looks like she's having some problems with the microphone. So what I'll do is I will continue with what I was going to show afterwards, but while Dora gets that figured out, hopefully we can get that working. So I will continue on with a couple slides here, a little bit about the campaign. So as you know, that's the URL for the campaign, but then also a couple guidelines for choosing trees. And this is going to hold true on the measuring it with the Globe Observer. What you want to look for are, it's just a couple tips here. The trees measured should be at least 5 foot tall, or which comes out to about 1.52 meters. And the trees measured should be isolated trees, like by themselves, or if there's just a large grouping of trees, go for the largest trees that are in the group. If you can access them. If they're right in the middle of the forest and it's really tricky to see the top of them from below, then you'll just have to choose trees that are on the outside of the wooded area that you can actually gain access to. Remember, in order to do tree height measurement, you have to be able to see the base of the tree, be able to walk to the base of the tree, and be able to, when you walk away from the base of the tree, see the top of the tree, okay? And then also we have on the website, you know, as you know, as part of Globe, there's the e-training. There's lots of slides that have been produced by folks at Globe and external partners regarding the e-training. And what you're looking at there is, in the e-training, is that you're looking at the full slides and you're becoming better familiar of how to take the measurements without going to, you know, an actual physical class or a physical training session. But with these, if you go to this link with the tree height tutorial slides, this link that I created here, I put together a PDF of just some necessary slides that are taken out of that e-training that'll help you understand how to do a little bit better of how to take the tree height measurements. All right, we're checking with Dora here. Sorry, a second. She's still having problems with that. So we may, if we can't get hers running, we may have her just share her slides and then we can talk to them if need be. But I'll go through this a little bit and we'll find out if the technology starts working, if she can get her microphone to work. All right. So those of you who are taking measurements as part of the campaign, don't forget Globe has the International Virtual Science Symposium. And what we have here is basically a deadline date, and that deadline date where you can get instructions for what you can submit, when you submit, and when you need to submit it. The projects are due by April 10th, but if you go on to the instructions link at that link below, you can check that out. And if you're going to submit a research project using, the tree height data that you've collected for the campaign or the land cover data or any of the other data, go ahead and, in your project, you can reference the campaign. That would be great. Only because it aligns you to, the larger audience that will be able to see it. And, those, as all those, the science projects as part of the symposium, judges look at that and they look to see how everything's connected as one of the metrics as part of the rubric. So yeah, that would be great for you to list that. So check that out. That's the link right there. That'll take you on to some of the instructions. So now, as you may know, we are in an intensive observation period. And what that means is that for the month of January, we are focusing on tree height. And with that, it means that for January, to be part of this, you will be taking measurements up to 3 times per week for the entire month of January. And we have some people who have started on that already. I noticed in some of the data that I've been looking at, but we had some schools that just came back last week in the United States, so they're just prepping up to go out and take some measurements. But as of right now, a school in Oman is leading the way. So the intensive observation periods, as you know, we're in tree height right now for January, but then we also are going to have several other ones. We're going to have in April, we're going to have focus on land cover. And then again in July, we're going to focus back on tree height. And then in October, we're going to focus back on land cover. And why I'm doing it that way is so you can then look at that data and compare the tree height data, 6 months apart to see if anything has changed by measuring those same trees. So like I said, you take 3 measurements per week minimum for the tree height protocol. The tree height protocol has to be included in that. But then you also have to take the same number of measurements for one or more of the other protocols, like anything from surface temperature to air temperature, anything, precipitation. So we have some, baseline to go by. So when we want to do some comparisons between tree height data and perhaps, soil moisture, or tree height data and air temperature, however that aligns, and however you want to do that's up to you. But then each participant will receive a virtual tree height badge, and that badge will go in your Globe account. Then also, and you can also have one personally, I guess. You can have one, to put wherever you need to. But then also the school that collects the most tree height data during the intensive observation period for the month will receive a virtual one-on-one Q&A session with a NASA scientist, researcher, or engineer. And you will also receive your own special badge, virtual badge, which will be the winner badge. And I just saw a prototype of those yesterday, and they're looking really cool. So they'd be really cool to get those. So, if you have any questions about the IOPs, put them in the chat. And then also, if you don't want to put in the chat, you can shoot me an email. You all should know my email by now, but I'm going to put it in the chat right now, just so you can have it here for reference purposes. You can shoot me an email at the address that you're going to see right now in the chat. If you have any questions about it. And if you're not comfortable with doing tree height measurements, make sure you go and you check out those, let me go back to this, the tutorial slides. They'll help you out a lot. There's a lot of good explanations of how to do the tree height measurements. And, the easiest ones to do are the ones on flat level ground. That's the simplest one to do, and that's the one we're going to focus on for a lot of the measurements with the app. We're gonna we want best ones that we get seem to be looking at them on a flat surface. So any questions, feel free to check that out. All right, and a little bit about trees from NASA. I just want to show you this, but here are two really cool articles that are worth reading. These come from the NASA Earth Observatory. Many of you might know that. One is called "What Do Satellites Tell Us About Trees?" And here's the address for that. And then also "Seeing Forests for the Trees and the Carbon, Mapping the World's Forests in 3 Dimensions." And there's the link for that. I'll leave those up here for a couple seconds while I check in to see if Dora is back. I don't see. Unfortunately, I don't see Dora back here. Yeah, there's Dora. All right, Dora, can you unmute I'll unmute your microphone, and can you say something then to see if it works? I just unmuted your microphone, Dora. Can you check it out? Make sure the setting. Hello? Dora, can you hear me? I hear something on the other end. I hear somebody on a microphone. Let me, sorry about the technical difficulties, but looks like something might not be working on their end. Dora, can you just say something into your microphone? I hear it in the background. Everybody's muted but you, Dora, and me. Okay, Dora's going to try different headphones. Maybe that'll work. So does anybody have any questions about the campaign and the IOP? Go ahead and put them in the chat. If anybody wants to talk about anything while we figure out the technology here, feel free to unmute yourself and go right ahead and talk to the group. We have a good group. We have 43 participants here right now. So don't be shy. Go ahead and unmute yourself. I know everybody's not that shy. Anybody else want to come in? Marissa, I'm going to answer this live. She's wondering when the translation for the app in Spanish will be out. I do not know, but what I'll do is I'm talking with the developers 3 o'clock Eastern time today. So after this webinar, and I will find out. And Jeff Bauman says, I'm wondering how the El Nino season is going to impact the trees in the spring. You have more snow than what I have in Michigan. Yeah, that's a great question. Don't know. So looking forward to seeing how that will impact. You know, it is strange that we have more snow in Maryland right now than we actually do than Jeff actually does in Michigan, which is a lot further north. Yeah. Cassie, do you have a lot of snow there? Because you're even further north, I believe.
We actually are expecting snow this weekend. We've had almost a foot and it's all melted, but you know, we get that refresh every January.
Yeah. All right, Dora, you want to check it out again?
Hey, Brian, quick question for you.
Yeah.
When did you say that the app update is within 2 or 3 months of coming out?
In 2-3 months, yeah.
2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
One of the things I just noticed is that in Groseal, Michigan, where I live, our township is actually starting to they have an initiative where they want to go out and they want to look at all of the quote unquote historic trees around the island, and they want to start mapping the tree heights and identifying these various trees. And so I guess I'm just giving you a heads up, like I might be in touch with you coming up here, because it's like if they're going to do that and put the time into it, we might as well double dip and share it with the Globe program as well. So hopefully we can show these administrators and people in our township how to do this, so we can work together and you know, they get their data and then we share it out right here on the island. And it kind of made me think that that might be something that other people could do maybe as well. If they know that their township cities are recording this data, taking this data, that might be something where we could all collaborate and put it as one. Just quick thought for you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's great. So how big is this area that they're going to be wanting to measure? Like,
I think they're just doing it all over the island, which is roughly 2 miles across by maybe 8 long. So I don't have the metric conversion to my Croatian friends. I apologize for that. So
yeah.
But I just found out about that the other day, that our township wants to do that. And after talking with the gentleman in Alberta, I'm actually starting to realize that this is actually a very, very big thing for cities and townships, is that they already have initiatives out there where they're identifying tree types and heights as well. But I don't think they're using it to measure, like, you know, for the carbon cycle or anything like that. But I think that data's out there, and I think it's being done by others. Just a quick thought. So.
Okay. That's awesome. Yeah, that'd be great. If that could serve as a catalyst to other groups around the U.S. and the world to go out and take measurements of those areas that are, you know, I don't want to say the word sacred, but historical in nature. Yeah. Just so we have that documented somewhere. Yeah. All right. Dora, once again, can you test it out? So Dora, what also Cassie mentioned, what you could do, if it can be done quickly, I guess, is you could download the desktop app and run it from there. Try to run it from there. So that's the if we can't get it working in the next couple minutes, then we're just going to end this webinar, and then I'll set up a time for another webinar where they can present once they get the technology working from their ends. Didn't seem to have the issue before, but you never know. That's technology, so it just happens. So we have to just grin and bear it. I try to be as informal as possible. Things happen. What can you do? So. Knows you know me in person. Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, I got it then.
Haha, sweet. How are you, Dora?
Good, you?
Good, good. So go ahead and share your screen. At the bottom,
Okay.
little green button. All right, there we go. Awesome.
Okay, so here is my group that did the measurements a few months ago. And for our measurements, wait, let me just move this. For our research methods, we used globe protocols, more specifically biometry for tree height and circumference, and atmosphere for solar minimum and maximum temperature. Over here you can see our dominant and co-dominant species in our park, which are the Mediterranean hackberry and downy oak. We did the measurements on the 5 trees for each of these species, and their coordinates, height and circumference. You can see that height in 2016 is much shorter than it is 2 years later, but such difference isn't as noticeable in the downy oak species. Here are the 2 graphs for solar noon temperature in 2016 and 2 years later. You can see how much the 2 temperatures have changed. More specifically, how years later the temperatures have increased. But the solar noon isn't the only temperature that increased, so did the minimum. In the bottom graph, you can see that temperatures went even below 0, but up here in 2018, it doesn't go even near 4 degrees Celsius. So that's interesting. But the maximum temperature relatively stayed the same. Maybe some months it's a bit different, but overall it kind of stayed the same. Now there is a lot of room for errors because of the temperatures, because the temperature was higher in 2018. It caused the canopies to dense, and the height also wasn't so easy to measure because at the top of the trees the branches will interfere one with another, so we had to guess which one was from which tree. And the tree's circumference was measured at our breast height and not exactly at 1 meter and 35 centimeters. And since we are all different heights, it was a few centimeters off, but not that much off. And for the conclusion, on the same day, after 2 years, we can see the difference in height of our Mediterranean hackberry, and it is much greater than in 2016. Some of our measurements, we believe they are not reliable because the conditions weren't the same in 2016 on the same day in 2016 and 2018, because from September to November last year, the temperatures were really high, and the tree canopies were a lot denser. And lastly, I would like to add that I really enjoyed this little trip to our park because it is more fun to learn outside the classroom, and the nature really calms us all down, and we were able to concentrate more, and I would like to do some more of outside activities like this. And that will be all from me.
Thank you, Dora. That was great. I love the slide where you really showed the tree height differences between 2016 and 2018, because you can really see, you know, that the measurement is very precise, because you see some of them, you just see a really small change in tree height. So that's why it's super important. And then, you know, yes, trees grow naturally, but there are places where trees just don't grow. Trees are taken down. But this really shows you here that, you know, the trees are healthy in this park. You know, the measurements that are being taken really solidify that they're growing. Honestly, I don't know, you know, how fast the oaks or the other trees should grow. You know, I don't know their average rate of growth, but it looks like, you know, we're seeing a steady increase in those tree heights as well over time.
Yeah. Well, our park is really rich in trees, so we are really happy to be
about how big is that park?
I wouldn't exactly know because I wasn't able to go
Okay.
to it all, but the part that we did the measurements at was actually really big. I couldn't say it exact.
Okay. Excellent. We'll have to look. We'll have to look that up. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Dora in her presentation? Go ahead and unmute yourself. I'll give you some time to do that. No questions or comments? Well, thank you, Dora. You know, I'm glad we got the technological issues sorted out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. You know, it was great and presentation was great. And this will be, you know, this is going to be recorded. So, I mean, it's being recorded. So we have that information here. And if anybody wants to ask you questions, you know, they can, you know, send some questions to Marina, I'm sure, and she'll get them to you. So Angela Rizzi, is that a comment for Dora? I'm assuming the question is, what do you think is not reliable about the measurements?
I would say the height, because as I said, the tree branches at the top were overlapping, and it was really difficult to say from which tree it was, and we were actually had to guess and go with the highest. So that was the most difficult measurement to take. Yeah.
See, that's a great learning experience. That's why, you know, I mentioned earlier in the webinar, you know, look for isolated trees or trees that, you know, ones that are part of a large grouping of trees. Find the tallest trees that you can easily see the top or the bottom. You can see the top of the tree and the bottom of the tree, the base of the tree. And if that's not possible, you know, do ones that you can definitely see those. So I can see that's tricky. And, you know, it's even trickier when the wind is blowing because it's really hard to get a steady measurement on the top of that tree. So you know, it gets tricky to take the tree height measurement. Question from Marissa, Dora, is I'm curious about the blank spaces in the graph that you showed from 2018. Were those missing data points?
I think my teacher would like to answer that question.
Okay, awesome. Okay.
We're just going to have to wait for her to write. But,
okay. Yep.
The thing is, we don't have a lot of people in my school that are in the GLOVE program. So it was kind of problematic to take the measurement. And since we have all the equipment at our school, we all live outside of the city, so it was really hard to measure at some point.
Mhm. Excellent. Well, thank you, Dora. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it over to Marina now. You should be able to, your microphone should be good to go, Marina.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Now I'm going to share my desktop.
All right, thank you.
So I must find here. Here, and to answer the question, I am not anymore in atmosphere measurings, so I don't know how the students are doing. I think they have the data, but they were not able to enter it because I had some problems with entering data too. And here is our presentation from the beginning. We did this in 1916, and we called it knock on wood because you know that it is an old saying, and in this old saying you know that everything. Oh, where is my mouse? Excuse me just a moment. Here we made it with another group of students. There were 13 students in the group, and these 3 students that are mentioned here are the students that presented it on the National Globe Fair in our country. This proverb was used from ancient times, and you know that trees help fight climate change and clean the air we breathe, so they absorb the excess of harmful carbon dioxide and suspended particles, aerosols. Our research questions were: do the trees in the park process enough carbon dioxide? Is the environment in the park polluted? And do the plants feel the stress in the polluted environment? This is an old picture. The park was formed in 1872. And this is a picture from early 19th. You can see the car and the traffic that was at the beginning of 20th century now. And we think that the trees process enough carbon dioxide and the environment is polluted because the traffic is heavy. Here now there are 4 for the cars. There are four trucks for the cars, and we think that in polluted environment more volatile compounds are excreted from the plants. These are our research methods. We use globe protocols for baryometry, for non-standard site carbon cycle, and for aerosols. And we tested our pollution with lithium. We used quantitative chemical analysis for aerosols, and we tried to determine the age of the trees by taking a sample with special drills. Here are our 2 sites, Park Mlaka and our school. And you can see that there are 2 ways from the park, from our schools to the park. We use shortcut. It's 7 minutes. It's about 400 meters when you use a shortcut. And according to modified classification, we have 821 number. Here is the center of our pixel. I don't have anything to show, but when you see this tree in the middle, this is the center of our pixel, and on the left you can see the 4-track road without trees, without fence. This is now as it is. My students did the canopy and ground cover using, excuse me, using densiometer, and we did as a globe protocol in 2 diameters, and this is what they found. The most is deciduous trees, 73%, and the rest is evergreen. And you see that mostly the ground was brown and none with no vegetables. And as you see, the shrubs are only 20% and other greens 24%. This is what we found. The dominant species is Mediterranean hackberry and the codominant species is downy oak. And these are the measurements from 2016. This is the carbon storage of the trees in the park. My students counted all the trees in the whole Mlaka park, and you can see the number of each species. It's a good big park. It has about 450,000 square meters, and this is what they measured. In GOP, there is no protocol for the tree biomass, so we had to take some coefficients from the US forestry protocols. And my students are 12th grade students, so they used math formulas and they measured everything alone without help. Here is the shrub carbon storage. I wanted them to use their math knowledge, so they calculated the shrub carbon storage too. We didn't put it on the globe site, but every group measured one of the carbon storage protocols. So this is the mass of the park. It's important for them to know why the carbon storage is biomass is important, because of the climate. We made 1 year ago in 2015, we made another project, aerosols in Europe, and they compared the climate change, what happened. We determined the pollution in the park by using AAP index, because we didn't, for us it was the most simple method. We used it before, so the students knew what to do, and we found out that the air was moderately polluted. And here are the aerosol thickness. You can see that in February, that's the fair part of the graph. It was the aerosols in park where the thickness was much greater, and the colors are green are natural aerosols that is by the wind and volatile compounds from the plants. Secondary aerosols are formed with chemical reaction, and the blue are combustion products. It's sulfur oxides, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and carbon and other products. We found, as you see in this picture, that the green colors was very high in park. So we use a jar method to pick up all the aerosols in the park and analyze them with the help of National Health Institute. And you see in red that in the park there was a lot of aromatic hydrocarbons that are very unhelpful, because they can cause lung canker and other types of canker. So it's not good to spend a lot of time in the park. This is our data analysis and conclusions, and our shows that the distributions is almost the same on both sides except in February, and we couldn't determine why it was like this. And this is the chemical analysis shows that the packs are produced, but we do not know why. And the oxygen plants is enough for the inhabitants because every inhabitant needs about 200,000 kilograms of oxygen a year, and these plants produce enough oxygen for about 2,500 inhabitants. But as the traffic produces less carbon dioxide, it's okay for them. And we couldn't determine how old the trees are because our drill was crumbled the huckleberry tree, and we couldn't put it in the oak tree. It was too hard. And we needed to have more samples from the air, from the roads around the park. We couldn't collect the samples. We put them 5 times on both roads, but they're all spilled or just they vanished. And we must analyze the leaves to collect the aerosols and compare the amount with our values. And this what we recommend to the company that takes care of the park. We did a good cooperation with them, so they told us that the plants that we missed, I forgot to tell you that after counting all the trees, we went to the okay, I'm sorry, I'm a little stressed because of we went. You saw it on the picture. It was a poster of all the plants in the park. So they told us that every year they have to renew the plants that were lost during the winter, and they put summer grass and summer plants in the park. So we told them that they could put some philodendrons, plums, gerbers, and chrysanthemums because they do not produce large amounts of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And to the residents, we recommended that they could plant indoor plants to absorb the carbon dioxide at night too. And we also cooperated with the Mlaka community. So we talked to them, we told them what we found, and they were very glad that someone was taking care of the park. And we thank National Institute for helping our students with chemical analysis, and the Čistoća, that's the company that helps with that preserve the park, and ILACIS, they donated us the solar photometer. And I just 2 words. My students did learn a lot from this project because they had to learn English, they had to learn informatics, they have to know the chemistry because they did all the reactions. I told them that they must write down the reactions, how the biomass is formed, so they used all their knowledge to do everything. That's all. I'm sorry that I couldn't make it before.
That's perfectly fine. Thank you so much, Marina. That was absolutely amazing. That was so involved and precise, the measurements that were being taken there. And I think it's interesting that, you know, the park does produce enough oxygen for Mlaka, which is great, but then also you don't want to spend much time in the park because of PAHs and, you know, potential carcinogens in the air. So, yeah, the hydrocarbons. So, yeah, it's that's a pretty crazy situation. But this is a perfect way, or this is a perfect project to show you how students learn about GLOBE. They take measurements using the GLOBE protocols, and they use their knowledge of the protocols and the science behind those protocols to inform people what's happening in their environment, you know, to the point where there's recommendations for what, you know, residents can do to you know, to offset some of the things that are happening, you know, things that are happening in the park. So this is amazing. It's really showing you how you're taking data to the next level by analyzing that data and making sense of it, and then informing the public to make critical and making critical decisions of what needs to happen in order to, you know, mitigate, you know, the problems that are being potentially caused. So this is great. Thank you so much for this. It's so much. I learned so much with this, and it very, very involved. So does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns? Either put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask any questions. We have about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. We're a little over right now, but because of the technology issues, that's okay. Does anybody have any questions here?
This is Svetlana. I have a small question. I apologize if I missed it. How did you collect the sample for the chemical testing? Again, you said you captured that in a jar and then you sent it to a laboratory. Is that correct?
Yes, you have to put half a liter of distilled water in the jar and then wait for 1 month for the samples for aerosols to collect. And then my students went with it to the National Institute, and with the scientists, they made the analysis, and these are the results.
Thank you, Marina.
From Peter Nelson, Marina, are there plans to continue monitoring?
I have a problem because I retired. So the students I worked with were my students last school year, but this school year I only substitute my colleague when she was ill, so I made the rest of what Dora said. This is the second part. If I were in the school, I would, but I'm not anymore, so only when I substitute someone, I will do some. And I try with my colleague to do something, but she has too much work to do, so yeah, she will do what she can, but it's not simple.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? And thank you so much for all the work you've done with your students, Marina. It's really great.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll finish off by mentioning next month we will have a webinar. It's supposed to be with someone from the U.S. Forest Service, but with the current shutdown, I cannot. I haven't been corresponding with this person. So hopefully we'll be able to get one. So the specific date for the webinar has not been determined yet. I will let everybody know through email and on the GLOBE website for the campaign when that will be, once we get that information set. And then also a couple other people who are part of federal government will be presenting in the next few months as well, but unavailable right now because of the shutdown. So thank you all for participating, and I'm going to stop recording right now.